Hello, I'm Samantha Nolan-Smith, and this is Lessons in Visibility. In this show, we ask what can be learned from the two faces of visibility. The first involves stepping forward and choosing to be seen and heard. The second opens you up to new ways of seeing and hearing the world around you. Welcome to the show. Hello, it is lovely to be with you. This topic comes up from time to time with the School of Visibility students, and particularly with Women Speaking Up students, where the conversation goes something like this. I'm an introvert. I prefer to express myself in long-form pieces of writing, podcast shows like this, longer videos. And I feel like in the world of TikTok videos, I don't fit. Firstly, I hear you. I am a long-form person, to the extent that I really love long books. My favorite book I read last year was The Eighth Life. I'm not going to try and say the author's name because I will absolutely botch it. But if you look up The Eighth Life for Brilka, it is a book about the country Georgia and what it was like from basically the First World War till the fall of communism to live under Soviet rule. It is an incredible book. It's beautifully written. And if I'm recalling correctly, it's about 900 pages. And I loved it. So I hear you when you say, I like long form pieces of writing, of information. I like them presented to me in that way. I'm a fan of nuance and complexity and arguments that take you on a journey. And I understand the dominance of information being presented in the complete opposite version of that, where everything is pithy and things are presented in less than 2 minutes and you're working with attention spans that are getting shorter and shorter by the day. So I want to first of all say, if you feel the way that I've expressed, I hear you and you're not alone. And I want to bring this concept to you. It's the concept of different containers or different buckets for different forms of expression. If you're a long-form person like I am, you're going to need a long-form container for your body of work. That might look like a book. That might look like a podcast show where you can week by week unpack different elements of something. That might look like a YouTube channel. It might look like always writing long-form articles and publishing them on whatever platform you like. It might look like being interviewed on podcast shows that go in for long conversations. For me, having Women Speaking Up, which has been an ongoing membership over 4 years, has been another container for longer conversations, for deeper conversations, for that longer form of expression and connection. In addition, and once you have that and you have met your core need to show up in your most authentic way, then you might start to ask yourself, how else might I express myself? Then the door opens up for other forms of expression. And that's where different buckets or different containers come into play, where you might then consider, well, how could I take one concept that I've shared in one chapter of my book and repurpose it or reconfigure it into a really fun video or into a carousel post or into a YouTube short? Once you have expressed yourself in the way that feels most natural to you, that meets that need in such a way that then other forms of expression sometimes reveal themselves. And that's when you can play with packaging of information, you can play with different ways to say the same thing, and you can apply all of your creative energies into doing that. What I find is that if you haven't worked with that first essential bucket, there feels like there's something missing all the time. It feels like I haven't really fulfilled my own needs for expression, and I'm just trying to meet everybody else's requirements around how they want to hear from me. And that's never satisfying, and it's never really grounded, and it's never you in your fullest expression. But if you can identify what's the bucket or the container that really pleases me, where I get my greatest pleasure from, which fuels me, and you dedicate time to that each week. And then you consider, are there any other buckets that would complement that? And then you decide maybe on 2 or 3 other buckets. You don't have to do another 20 buckets. You can just decide on 2 or 3 others, which might bring people in, which might stop them scrolling because it's just a little snippet. One of the ways that I like to do that, for example, is you have these podcast episodes and then I just take a little snippet and I put it into an audiogram and I share that, because it's much more likely that if somebody's scrolling on social media, for example, that they might well engage in a 1 minute or 2 minute audiogram, and it sparks their interest to such an extent that they then come on over and they listen to the podcast. But if I only offered it in the full format, I might miss some of the people who are in other places where short form content is more popular, but who are nevertheless interested in long form content, because we're all multifarious. We have moments where we need something short and sharp and we need it to be delivered to us quickly. And there are other times where we need to ruminate on an idea and we need the space and the time to think it through in detail. And you have that capacity to be creative, to express yourself in those different ways. And when you do that, you do the work a service, a great service, and you do your community a great service. And if you feel like, yes, but I'm never going to be a pithy person, then that's where having other people look at your content, pull it apart, present it in different formats is so, so helpful. That's the kind of work that you can then hand over to somebody else and seek their assistance in repackaging it in lots of different formats. So different buckets or different containers for different forms of self-expression. So remember to identify, what is my core need? What is the bucket or the container that best meets my form of self-expression? And you don't have to spend hours and hours and hours on this. You can just notice what's coming up. I want to express it in dance. I want to express it in paint. I want to express it via my voice. And then when you are filled up with that, are there other buckets, other containers, other ways of presenting this information that I might also share? I love that way of working because it really honors the work. It says this work matters so much that it deserves multiple showings in the world. And that is the lesson for today. Thanks for listening to Lessons in Visibility. If you'd like to connect in other places, come on over to theschoolofvisibility.com. And you can also find us at The School of Visibility on Instagram, Substack, Facebook, and Threads. Lessons in Visibility is produced by the School of Visibility on the land of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people. I acknowledge the peaceful legacy of custodianship that tens of thousands of years of coexistence with the land has bestowed on us all. And I note the visibility journey that remains unfinished. Voice, treaty, truth.